he's made an appointment there. Is it the Department of Women? Yeah, it doesn't. So there's a lot of virtue signaling that I feel happens. I mean, we're in Women's Month, and there seems to be a lot of virtue signaling that happens around this time, and also around the 16 days of activism, where all of a sudden you have these men who stand up at a podium, give a speech, and yet women are getting beaten and killed, firstly by their partners, and also just in general, there seems to be this undertone of really hateful violence in general in our country. I don't know that it's unique to us as a country, probably on the continent. I don't want to speak out of turn, but there doesn't seem to be, once again, even in this specific area, there isn't a clear plan. And I don't know whether or not you have any sort of opinion on the fact that there needs to be something clear, whether or not it's working in coalition with foundations, with the Human Rights Council, in government, with civil society in and of itself. What needs to happen for us to stop just placating and saying, yes, you're on the list of things on the agenda, but rather start to make impactful steps? Because one thing that we do know is that this can't keep going on for much longer. And we've seen over the past couple of years, those voices that were unheard are speaking a lot louder, they're screaming if need be, and all of a sudden there's this major focus, but yet again, there seems to be a lack of a plan of execution to fix. So what do we need to do? What needs to stop, and what do we need to maybe consider doing so that we can get somewhere? We need to get somewhere.
I think there needs to be consequences.
Okay.
For me, one glaring omission in terms of all these things that have been happening, violence against women, and all these atrocities that have been happening on women, there's been a sort of glaring lack of consequences for perpetrators, and most of the times known perpetrators. You pointed out that some of these things are happening, and it's people who are intimately involved with some
partners,
and some of the victims. But there just doesn't seem to be a sort of concrete set of consequences. Like if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. And I think that's the starting point. I think what South African women have also shown, especially in the recent week, especially with the total shutdown, which I thought was phenomenal, and really got me thinking about what have we done as men in this country. I think South African women have shown that they are very capable of articulating their struggles, their issues, and organizing themselves. But what is sort of lacking is a partner, a credible partner, in the form of the state. I hate to say, that actually takes them seriously and actually is willing to work with them and take the lead from them. Some of these things are social issues, and they don't always necessarily need to be state-centric, if you will. So if there was a way that the state could just, come alongside women and ensure that there's consequences for and serious consequences at that for some of these things that are happening, I think that would bode well and strike the right chord in terms of getting to a point where gradually you are getting rid of the problem. And then there's also just issues of the way that men are socialized. I think we're terribly socialized on so many levels. And I think just, as I was saying, that some of these things are social issues. Families just need to start doing better as well in terms of the way that we raise boy children and the things that we teach and impart. I've just had a son now who is 4 months old, and I'm thinking, and it's really got me thinking, what is it that I'm going to impart in this boy? That's going to make him the difference. It's going to make him, and I think it starts there as well. So
so two things that I want to end on, and they're both going to require you to just maybe think a little bit outside. One is you're almost 3 months into your new role at the department, and what is that top 10 list for you that you would like to see happen with regards to international relations for us as a country, firstly with our African partners, but also with the international community? So that's part one of the question. And the other one is, if you had to rate South Africa on the continent right now and sort of cover all the majority of the stuff that you've spoken about, the issues with human rights, the issues with trade and investment, and the issues with policy that we have versus our counterparts on the continent. Where are we? What do we need to sort of fix quickly? And how best are we going to make sure that we can move forward with everybody that we need to move forward with?
Yeah.
You can think on that a little bit, because
Sure.
I've got a feeling it's not just a here's what we need to do, because there are some very clear nuances that need to be dealt with first before we can sort of head down the right path. So yeah, those two, you can pick which one of the two you want to go with first.
Does that have to be top 10?
Even two or three,
Yeah.
because I think the way that we are positioning ourselves now is very important, because like you'd said, there was a time when we were growing, we hit stagnation as a nation, and since then we've had to pull ourselves back. You know, we took 10 steps forward. We're pretty much where we were before the Zuma administration. If you had to do a checks and balances for him on paper, it hasn't yielded a net positive in general for us as a country. There have been some good things that happened, but overall it hasn't been great. So at your level, where you get to influence policy, you get to influence to a certain extent what we focus on, what is it that you're going to look at?
Sheesh. That's a bit of a tricky one. Because, on the one hand, I'm still very much finding my feet.
Sure.
In this new role, and I don't want to overestimate what it is that one could do, especially at a provincial level.
Sure.
But I find it very interesting, because all my working life, the focus has been on the national picture. And now I'm sort of like focused on a more micro picture and a sort of like implementation, sort of, it's more implementation oriented,
yes,
as opposed to just abstracting at a sort of higher policy level. And that's the one interesting thing about where I am now. I think what the provincial political elites have put together is a very interesting program.
Okay.
And I think it's definitely on the right path. And one of the major things is actually taking development to where people are.
Okay.
And that's with the program around the township economy, etc., and the whole move towards transformation and modernization and reindustrialization. And I think if you were to list some of the top things that should happen, it's definitely paying attention to the youth bulge.
Okay.
And in so doing, thinking a bit outside the box, because South Africa has this huge labor potential, low skills base, and especially if you look at what other countries have been able to do, I think another thing to do is, in terms of this youth bulge, is looking outside of conventional modes of development. So this whole thing of you go to school, get a matric, go to
university,
get a bachelor's degree.
Then work.
It's not necessarily the only path to success. So I think there's a lot to be said about the TVET sector and skills development at that level. I think technology has huge potential for this country. You could create, you could use tech as a major booster of young people's potential and the things they could do with tech. If you look at where we are, just generally talking about the fourth industrial revolution, so to speak.
Yeah.
You could harness all this youth potential and towards that and focus and harvest the potential that comes with technology. So I think that's another thing. And I think as well, you go to a township on any given day, it's so sad to see like so many young people just chilling there on the corner doing nothing,
not working,
not
etc.
working.
Yeah.
And I think you could try to convince these huge international manufacturers to come and set up some of their plants in the township, in those areas where, especially where, like, if you look at the West Rand and mining towns are dying, then how do you turn that around? You could actually invite some of these players to say, hey, how about you come in and set up your plants here, where there's so much labor potential, and at the same time work with TVET colleges to set up the precisely the kind of skills that you want, and that you want to feed your manufacturing process, and I think those are some of the things that could be done, like really, especially at this sort of more micro level where we focus on implementation, and I think there's exciting potential around those issues. Yeah.
All right, and continentally, where are we?
Continentally,
how do we look?
Continentally, we still on a good footing, right? One of the criticisms continentally, especially in the past few years, was that we sort of withdrawn.
Yes.
Whether we like it or not, the continent views us as some sort of continental leader. And I think to some extent we still have that mantle, and we're still playing that role, albeit we've sort of shrunk in that role. So there's a lot to be done, and also just taking into account the very complex history of South Africa and the continent. We used to be this continental pariah, and this isolationist, because of the then apartheid government. But a lot has changed, and I think, in as much as we've sort of blundered or been subsumed by our own domestic affairs and sort of withdrawn from the continent, if you will, there's a lot of goodwill. Surprisingly enough, there's a lot of goodwill. We still looked at as South Africa can play a constructive role in helping us fix 1, 2, and 3. Yes. And even last night I heard that sentiment again. So continentally, we still at an okay place, but there have been some regressions, and I think we're on a good footing to sort of build up again
and catch up
and catch up
where we need to be.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Look, I'm going to leave it at that. There are a couple of other things that I did want to cover. There is, conflict resolution and post-conflict policy implementation, and some of the other stuff that you've sort of, notched on your belt, if you will, over the years. But I'm hoping that you'll be back. Please do come back. I'm going to say thank you, and thank you very much for joining us, and I'm hoping to see you guys again in a little while. Sambulo, thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you on the flip side. Cheers.